Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make my version of gluten-free cake mix cookies. And if you follow Our Heritage Works on YouTube here, you'll know that he has done a cake mix cookie, gluten-free of course, and he has asked for everyone to be a part of his challenge. And what that challenge is to see what we can all come up with. And I thought, what a great idea. I wanted to be a part of this challenge. So my version, of course, will be gluten-free, also with honey, not sugar. And I'll be doing a little bit of a different variation than what Our Heritage Works has done. And so I think it's so much fun to have a challenge like this, and then we can all be creative, all use ingredients that we can have, and see what we can come up with. And he also provided the recipe for making your own gluten-free cake mix, or his version where he uses a store-bought gluten-free cake mix. I'm using the recipe, kind of, where you make your own cake mix. I don't know if it will work yet. We'll experience this together. So for my gluten-free cake mix ingredients, I've got 1½ cups of my gluten-free flour, 1¼ teaspoon of baking powder, ½ teaspoon baking soda, and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. All in there. And then I melted in the microwave a ½ cup of coconut oil. The recipe calls for vegetable oil. I'm using coconut oil today. I also thought about using butter, but I decided to go with coconut oil. And because I'm not using any xanthan gum like the recipe calls for, I do have an extra egg. So I'm using 3 eggs today. I'm using honey, which is not quite a ½ cup of honey, which it would be 1 cup of sugar that you add into your dry ingredients. And then I've got 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And I thought about using date sugar instead of honey, and then I would just add that to the dry ingredients. But I decided not to go with date sugar today because I'm going to be using freeze-dried strawberries as part of my mix-ins. And these are strawberries I freeze-dried last year, last May. So I'm really excited to see what they look like a year later. And I won't use all of this bag. But because they've been freeze-dried, they do need to be rehydrated a little bit. And that's also why I chose to go with coconut oil. Sometimes coconut oil in a cake recipe can end up a little bit greasy. I thought if I partially rehydrate my freeze-dried strawberries, they will soak up any extra oil and any extra liquid from my eggs. But I'm also going to be using some orange juice to rehydrate my strawberries. So my flavor, I guess I should tell you, is a strawberry, a little bit of orange pecan cake mix cookie. I'm really excited. I think they'll be delicious. And I think it will all be okay because the recipe that Our Heritage Works was using, you add a little bit of extra water if your mix is too dry. So I think with my coconut oil and my extra egg, if it's too dry, I can add in more orange juice. And if it's too wet, I can add in just a little bit of extra gluten-free flour. So we'll see. Or I could even add in some more freeze-dried strawberries to help soak up that extra liquid. So I think it will all work together. It seems in my head that it will all work together. We'll find out. So what I want to do with my strawberries, one of the nice things about freeze-dried fruit like this is you can powder it down and make a fruit powder to add flavor or color to whatever you're doing. I'm not looking to completely powder my strawberries like a flour, but I am going to squish them in the bag and crush them up a little bit. I guess the only bad thing about crushing them in the bag is when I open it, unless there's a whole one in there, we won't be able to see what it looks like a year later. And I should mention as well, my oven is already preheated to 350. I had the oven on from when I was toasting my pecans. And they look really good. I didn't do an amazing job of crushing them up, but pretty much. So always take out the oxygen absorber. There, we've got a couple of big chunks. And a year later, look, they look delicious. Bright color, still crispy. I've been so happy with my Harvest Right freeze dryer. And I just wanted to let you know that May is a mega sale for Harvest Right. This is their version of Black Friday sales in May. and they are offering $500 off a purchase of a freeze dryer. And this is the perfect time of year to buy a freeze dryer. I don't know about you, but my garden is getting started, and this is such a helpful way to help preserve a lot of my harvest. So look for my link in the description box below and check out Harvest Right freeze dryers. If you use my link and purchase a freeze dryer, I do earn a small commission that helps me to bring you more freeze drying videos or freeze dried ingredient videos. So down here in the bottom of the bag is the powder that I wanted. I don't mind if there's a little bit of chunks, but I do want mostly powder. And I've made a really big mess here. Put that in there so you can see the beautiful color. And I'm going to go a little more than the half cup I was aiming for. There we go. Now the tricky thing with freeze-dried things, once you've opened the bag, they will start absorbing moisture from the air. Now lucky for me, I live in Utah where it's a really dry climate, and if I put this in a jar with a tight sealing lid, this will stay crunchy even without the oxygen absorber. So I'm going to put this in a jar very quickly, and then we'll continue on with our recipe. I think strawberry and orange flavor go really well together. And because I don't plan on using all of this orange juice to rehydrate my strawberries, if my mix is too dry in the end, I'll just add some more orange juice or water. So let's just go a little bit at a time. I thought about adding this powder in as part of my dry ingredients, which I think it would work, but I was concerned that it would make the cake mixture either too wet or too dry. And because it is fruit, it would just make the cake part soggy. Now you can see this is nowhere near rehydrated. So I'm going to leave it like this for now, just because I want those to be able to absorb extra liquid if my coconut oil is too oily, and if my extra egg is too liquidy. We'll see. So I've got 3 eggs here. We'll just go right in the mixing bowl. Everything at room temperature. Just shy of a half a cup of honey. And if you've never heard of or had a cake mix cookie before, they're pretty much exactly what they sound like. It's kind of a big, fluffy cookie. They kind of remind me of the same texture as a pumpkin chocolate chip cookie. Those are kind of a cake cookie. So very similar. Just mix that together, throw in my vanilla. And my coconut oil it's actually not even warm, even though I melted it in the microwave. I'm going to get these mixed together first, and then we'll dump in the coconut oil. And if you've ever melted coconut oil before, this is what it looks like. Kind of chunky before it all solidifies again. I'm going to switch to my spatula, and we'll go in with the dry ingredients all in one. Now this mixture is supposed to be firm enough that it's like a cookie dough. As you can see, mine is kind of a thick cake batter right now. So this is where I'm hoping that my freeze-dried strawberries will thicken this up a little bit more. Now don't expect your freeze-dried strawberries to add an artificial pink color, like an artificial pink cake. It will be a natural pinkish color. Okay, this is looking really good. I'm going to add in my half cup of toasted chopped pecans. I want all of my ingredients to be in here mixed together before I decide if it needs any extra liquid. It will take the freeze-dried strawberries a few minutes to fully rehydrate with all of the liquid that's in here. Now I think the other challenge might be with some of the bigger chunks of freeze-dried strawberries in here, if there isn't enough liquid, they might end up staying a little bit crunchy, which I don't think would be a bad thing at all, because my pecans should be a little bit crunchy. Even though it's not firm enough like a cookie dough, I think the texture that it is will still work just kind of plopped out on the cookie sheet. Now I guess the next question is, how big do you want your cookies to be? I think I'm just going to eyeball with my little spoon here. I would like to get 12 cookies. So I'm going to start plopping them here, smallish, and then we can go back and add more. Hopefully they're not too close together. I don't know how much they'll spread. But it seems like it is the texture of a cookie dough. Not a really stiff cookie dough, but cookie dough. And I think they're all about the same. They look pretty good. Okay, these will go in the oven for 8 to 15 minutes. Everyone's oven is different. I'm going to start checking them at 8 minutes. Oh my gosh, you guys. I'm thinking I should have done this in a muffin pan. But clearly this is what happens when you experiment. They smell amazing. But not exactly the cookies that we're looking for. They're really big cookies. Very carefully remove them to a cooling rack. And you know, I got out just one cooling rack, but I think I need two. They really do smell good. And what is an experiment without a failure? And to be honest with you, I think failing is one of the most important things you could ever do. There's so much to be learned by failing. All right, these are so fast and easy to make, you could just do it again. So I'm making some changes this time. I didn't crush my strawberries as fine into a powder, and I did add more liquid to them to make them a little juicier, I guess. I'm still so impressed every time I rehydrate or use one of my freeze-dried ingredients. They smell and taste delicious. They might not look exactly like you want or like the fresh version, but so worth it. So now the exception that I'm going to make for this version is about 3/4 of a cup of date sugar in with my dry ingredients. I'm doing 1 less egg, so just 2 eggs. I already have my eggs and my vanilla in there. Same pecans, same strawberries, and then this time I'm going to use butter. 1/2 cup of butter. And I will say, I've eaten almost a whole one over here. They are delicious. They are so good and very cake-like. Not exactly a cake cookie, but this would make a delicious cake. So these will not go to waste. I love experiments like this where even though it's not exactly what you're going for, it's still delicious. And for that matter, they don't need frosting, but you could. You could put a layer of frosting and make that a really soft sandwich cookie. Or just eat it. Those are delicious. I was going to mix my dry ingredients together before I started the butter, but that's all right. Let me just keep going here with the butter. Move that aside. And this time I am going to add the date sugar to the dry ingredients. I've got a spoon here. And I'm using the same measurements as before. 1½ cups of my gluten-free flour, 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Bring back our butter. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but I didn't even wash my dishes. It's all the same ingredients that all have the same flavors. So 2 eggs and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. In with all of the dry ingredients and the date sugar. I do have some extra flour just in case. I really want this to be more of a cookie dough this time. Which is partly why I decided to use butter instead of coconut oil. I kind of feel like the coconut oil is why they spread so much in the oven the first time. And already we're doing a really good job with the date sugar in here. And of course, because date sugar is dates, it will be a little bit darker of a color of your cake batter. But this is already much thicker than our last batter. So here's my strawberries. They are still kind of liquidy, which is okay because I still have nuts to add in, and this is pretty stiff. In with our strawberries and another half cup of toasted chopped pecans. Okay, there we go. I'm happy with this. I was happy with the other one. I got another cookie sheet, and I'm going to go 12 again. Use my 2 spoons here. Shape them a little bit with your hand if you need to. It's a much better dough to work with. I said I was going to use 2 spoons, but here we go with our fingers. I don't want to make these any bigger than this. I probably have enough cookie dough for maybe 4 more cookies. I'm going to put those on a separate cookie sheet, but I can start baking these ones now, and we'll see what they do. Hopefully they won't spread as much as the other ones. That's partly why I made them a little bit smaller. So I'm getting a lot more cookies this time. And I've got 6 more here on a smaller cookie sheet. And these cookies in the oven, they're not spreading out like this. They're looking really good. But I wanted to show you the first cookie sheet that I baked these ones on. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the whole parchment paper is wet. And I think that's from the coconut oil. I've mentioned before when I've used coconut oil in cakes, sometimes it's a really greasy end result. I don't know. I love coconut oil and I think it's delicious. But it does need a little bit of finesse and finagling in a recipe. Because I need my cooling racks, I'm going to move these over to another cookie sheet. These are completely cooled off, by the way. They cooled off really fast. So there we go. And here's the one that I was eating earlier. Definitely a delicious cake. I would make this again as a cake and eat it just like this. And I really like that it's kind of golden and crispy on the bottom here. But is it a cake cookie? Not at all. It really is delicious. And there's so much strawberry flavor. I was worried that by adding orange juice to the strawberries that it would take away from the strawberry flavor, but not at all. These cake cookies look much better. And because I used the date sugar, they are a much darker color, which I would think would be the same color if you used brown sugar. I will just very carefully remove them to a cooling rack. And they look really dark on the bottom. And these ones actually went for about 18 minutes in the oven. They're a pretty solid little cookie. And these ones are a little bit darker brown than my first tray. And I actually made these ones a little bit bigger. I think I could have gotten at least 1 more cookie, maybe 2 smallish cookies out of the rest of my cookie dough or cake batter dough. Whatever you call it. But they sure smell good. And I can tell you they taste good. It's the same ingredients as my really flat pancake cake cookies. This was a really fun experiment. And this is a really delicious experiment. I could have used different ingredients and then I wouldn't have all of the same ingredients, but I don't mind. This flavor combination is so good. So, is it a fail? Well, kind of. This one is a fail, but it's still really delicious and it makes a delicious cake. So if you want a strawberry cake recipe, here you go. Was it really intended for that? I actually do have a delicious strawberry cake recipe, but it still is delicious. Now, as for these ones, they are kind of a dense cookie. And you can tell the difference. These ones are a little bit darker. Oh, I just broke a piece off of there. So the bottoms of these are definitely darker. They're not burnt. And then these ones are much lighter. In fact, I think these ones actually probably could have gone a little bit longer in the oven. Here's the one where a little piece fell off. They look really good. They look like a cake on the inside. Although I will say a denser cake, not a light and fluffy cake. And here, let's compare side by side. Now this is the texture that you would want a cake to be. You wouldn't want a cake this flat, or maybe you would, and then you just layer between pieces of cake and buttercream or something. And then this is my first batch. Let's see what these ones look like on the inside, just to get a full view of all three of them. And the only difference between my first cookie sheet of this one and the next one is these ones didn't bake as long in the oven. And they look almost the same, because they are the same. I've already eaten one of these. I'll just very carefully put that back. And I'm pretty positive these will all freeze really well. Or you could share them with a friend or just eat them all. And I'm sure you can tell, they're very easy to fall apart and crumble apart. But they taste really good. So these were my ones that didn't go as long in the oven. And I think you can kind of tell they seem heavier. And I mean heavier by weight. When I was putting them on the cooling rack from the cookie sheet, they felt heavier, like they weren't baked all the way. But since they've been cooling off, I think they could have gone, maybe 2 more minutes in the oven. But because of that, that's why I baked these ones a little bit longer. So let's see here. And crumbling apart. And I think that's because of the date sugar. Date sugar is pretty dry, but I think if I had used a 3rd egg in place of the xanthan gum, I think they would have spread out way too much like those ones. I'm gonna eat all of these little pieces here. Absolutely delicious. You can see all my strawberries poking through. You can't really see the pecans at all, but we know they're in there. So thank you to Our Heritage Works for inviting me to come along on this challenge. How much fun has this been? What a delicious challenge. So let me know if you guys make this recipe. Let me know what flavors you decide to make your cake cookies. Head on over to Our Heritage Works. I'll put a link to his channel in my description box below. I'll put both recipes that I made today. Even though this one didn't turn out exact, you might want the ingredients and then you can kind of mess around with this one in your own kitchen. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll see you on the next one.